The skies over Lebanon lit up once more last night, as the darkness was pierced by sudden flashes of fire and thunder. Sirens wailed in Beirut, echoing through the city's narrow streets, as Israeli jets unleashed another relentless wave of airstrikes overhead, their engines rumbling like distant storms. The city's uneasy silence was shattered by the roar of explosions, echoing through streets still haunted by memories of past wars and recent scars. It was a dramatic escalation, sending shockwaves not only across the region but reverberating around the world, as newsrooms scrambled to cover the unfolding crisis. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made his intentions unmistakably clear, standing before cameras with a still He ordered the strikes as the world watched, leaving no doubt that Israel was prepared to go further if provoked. The timing was critical, coming at a moment of fragile diplomacy. Talks of peace deals and shaky ceasefires now teeter on the edge, with negotiators struggling to keep hope alive amid rising tensions. Every missile that arcs through the night sky seems to push hope for peace further away, deepening the sense of uncertainty and fear among civilians. The images from Beirut are stark and haunting, broadcast live to a world holding its breath. Flames rise from shattered buildings, casting an eerie glow as families flee into the darkness, clutching what little they can carry. The world's attention is now fixed on the uneasy border between Israel and Lebanon, where military patrols move under tense watch. News networks flash urgent banners. Netanyahu orders strikes. Iran, peace deal at risk, heightening the sense of crisis. This is not just another clash. It is a turning point with consequences that could ripple far beyond the region. The stakes are higher now than ever before, as diplomats and leaders scramble to prevent a wider catastrophe. The next decisions made in Jerusalem, Tehran, and Washington could shape the fate of millions, determining whether the thread of peace holds or snaps under the strain. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the nation with a stern face. He called for direct talks with Lebanese officials, but his words were uncompromising. Israel will not accept a ceasefire while its citizens are under threat, he declared. The message was clear. Israel's willing to talk, but on its own terms. In his speech, Netanyahu argued that only a real negotiation can bring lasting security. We will not be drawn into a false calm, he said. He accused Hezbollah of hiding among civilians and using southern Lebanon as a launching pad for attacks. Lebanon's leaders responded cautiously. Some saw Netanyahu's call as a chance, others as a trap. Negotiations under fire are not real negotiations, one Lebanese official said privately. Trust, already thin, is wearing away fast. The world is left guessing. Is Netanyahu truly open to peace, or is this just another move in a deadly game? The answer could decide the region's future. The United States and Iran have spent months trying to broker a fragile ceasefire involving Gaza and Iraq. Behind closed doors, diplomats from both sides have engaged in tense negotiations, hoping to prevent further escalation and bring some measure of stability to a region long plagued by conflict. But Lebanon seems left out in the cold. Despite being deeply affected by the violence, Lebanese leaders find themselves excluded from the main talks, watching anxiously as decisions are made without their direct input. American officials insist the deal was never meant to cover Hezbollah, the powerful militia in Lebanon. They argue that the focus must remain on Gaza and Iraq, leaving Lebanon's fate uncertain and its people vulnerable to further instability. Iran disagrees, saying any attack on Lebanon is an attack on its interests. Iranian leaders warn that they will not stand by if their allies are threatened, raising the stakes for everyone involved. Pakistan has tried to step in as a mediator. Islamabad hosted emergency talks, hoping to bridge the widening gap. Pakistani officials have reached out to both Tehran and Washington, urging restraint and dialogue. Peace cannot be piecemeal, Pakistan's foreign minister said. Either the region is secure for all, or it is secure for none. He emphasized that a lasting solution must include every nation and every group affected by the violence. Iran's leaders are furious. They accuse the United States and Israel of bad faith, claiming the strikes on Lebanon break the spirit of the peace process. Tensions are running high, and trust between the parties is at an all-time low. In Tehran, thousands marched, chanting, "Death to Israel," and demanding a strong response. The streets echoed with anger and frustration as ordinary Iranians called for their government to take decisive action. Each country is acting for its own reasons, but with every new attack, the lines between friend and foe blur further, making peace harder to imagine. The region teeters on the edge, as leaders struggle to find common ground and prevent a wider war that could engulf them all. Beirut is a city on edge. Every new strike sends families scrambling for shelter. Schools are closed. Hospitals overflow with the wounded. The Lebanese government has issued repeated warnings for civilians to stay indoors and avoid main roads. Israeli leaflets flutter down from the sky, warning residents to evacuate certain neighborhoods. Many have nowhere to go. "We live with our suitcases packed," says one mother, clutching her daughter's hand. "We have to be ready to run at any moment." Iran's response has been fierce. Revolutionary Guard commanders vow to retaliate if attacks continue. Tehran's proxies in the region, including Hezbollah, have already launched rocket barrages into northern Israel, raising the stakes. The violence threatens to spiral out of control. Every strike brings new warnings, new fears, and more pressure on leaders to either step back or step up the fight. Far from the battlegrounds, another crisis is brewing. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil passes. Warships crowd the waters, and oil tankers idle, waiting for a sign that it is safe to sail. Experts warn that even the threat of closure sends oil prices shooting up. If Iran acts, the world economy feels it. Immediately, says an energy analyst in London. Insurance costs for ships have already doubled. Some companies are rerouting vessels, adding weeks to deliveries. The world's fuel supply hangs in the balance. With every new skirmish, the risk of a blockade grows. The price of oil is not just a number, it's a measure of global anxiety. In Islamabad, diplomats from across the region gather in hushed rooms. The mood is tense but hopeful. Pakistan's leaders race to keep talks alive, offering their capital as neutral ground. "We do not want another war in our neighborhood," says one senior official. Delegates from Britain, France, and China join Iran, the United States, and Lebanon at the table. But progress is slow. Every new attack in Lebanon or Israel threatens to derail the talks. "We are negotiating with one eye on the news," a European envoy admits. The United Nations has sent mediators, urging both sides to halt strikes and agree to humanitarian corridors. So far, neither side is willing to blink first. The talks stretch late into the night, with coffee cups and frayed nerves piling up. World leaders hope that dialogue can overtake violence, but the clock is ticking, and every explosion makes peace harder to reach. War is hardest on the young. In Beirut, children huddle in basements, drawing pictures by flashlight. "I want to see the sky, but it makes my mother cry," says a 7-year-old boy, his voice barely above a whisper. Schools are closed, playgrounds empty. In southern Lebanon, families sleep in shifts. Parents take turns watching for drones and shell fire. "My son has nightmares every night," one father shares. He dreams of planes falling from the sky. Some children, orphaned by recent bombings, now live with neighbors or distant relatives. Across the border in Iran, children's lives are also shaped by fear. In villages near the frontier, families worry about Israeli strikes or Iranian reprisals. "We pray every morning for peace," a teacher in Kermanshah says, "but our children know too much about war." Their stories are a reminder. Every headline, every strike, has a human cost that echoes for generations. In the fog of conflict, the innocence of childhood is often the first casualty. Some children are pulled even deeper into violence, their lives forever altered by the chaos around them. The streets that once echoed with laughter now ring with the sounds of distant explosions and hurried footsteps. Reports have surfaced of teenagers recruited by Iranian-backed groups, trained to carry weapons or relay messages. These young people, some barely in their teens, are thrust into roles far beyond their years. Forced to make choices no child should ever face. Human rights observers warn this is becoming more common as the war drags on. Each passing month, more families are torn apart, and more children are swept into the machinery of conflict. One boy, just 13, tells his story anonymously, his voice trembling as he recalls what happened. "They gave us uniforms and told us to help," he says. "The uniforms felt heavy, not just on our shoulders but on our hearts. At first, I thought it was a game, but then I saw real blood. The reality hit me, the fear, the confusion, the sense that nothing would ever be the same." His parents tried to keep him home, but the pressure was too strong. The fear of retaliation, the promises of honor, and the weight of propaganda made it impossible to resist. They said it was for our country, for our faith. The trauma runs deep, leaving wounds that are invisible, but lasting. Psychologists in Lebanon and Iran report a sharp rise in PTSD among children and teens. The mental scars are as real as any physical injury, haunting them long after the fighting ends. we see nightmares, panic attacks, depression, says Dr. Noura Hafez, a child psychiatrist in Beirut. Many children struggle to sleep, haunted by memories they cannot escape. Some children stop speaking for days, retreating into silence as a way to cope with the overwhelming pain. The scars are not just physical, they linger in the mind and soul, shaping the future in ways we are only beginning to understand. For many, the war will never truly end, not when the fighting stops, and not when the headlines fade. The memories remain, a silent battle that continues long after the world has moved on. As bombs fall in the Middle East, gas stations from New York to New Delhi see prices rise. The global oil market is in turmoil. Every new threat to the Strait of Hormuz sends futures trading into a frenzy. Airlines warn of higher ticket prices. Truckers and farmers protest as fuel costs soar. The uncertainty is everywhere. One day we can fill our tanks, the next we have to wait in line, says a taxi driver in Cairo. European governments scramble to release emergency reserves, hoping to calm nerves. But the anxiety is real. Ordinary people feel it in their wallets, their commutes, their dinner tables. Economists warn that if the crisis spreads, recession could follow. For now, the world holds its breath, watching, waiting, paying more with each passing day. For millions across the Middle East, every day is a test. Will the sirens sound? Will the water and power stay on? Will loved ones return home tonight? The tension is constant, invisible, but suffocating. Diplomats talk of peace, but on the ground, fear rules. Children grow up too fast, learning the language of war before they learn to read. Parents make impossible choices, stay or flee, speak up or stay silent. The search for peace continues, but the path is uncertain. In living rooms and shelters, in capitals and refugee camps, people pray for an end to the violence. Until then, hope must compete with fear, and the world waits for the next headline.